You mentioned that the U.S. and Russia need to work on some of these fine points of a deal.
Yeah, you want the fine points to be spelled out?
Well, of course, I'd love that, but my question
this is
was,
not the way we...
European sources say that the U.S. proposal is really just kind of a list of bullet points. Does Russia have details, the details you need at this point, in terms of a formal proposal?
We are really polite people, and unlike some others, we never discuss in public what is being discussed in negotiations. Otherwise, negotiations are not serious. To ask for somebody's opinion regarding the substance, go to Zelensky. He is happy to talk to anybody through media, even to President Trump. He presents his claims. We
he said he
are
hasn't
serious.
received a
We are serious
proposal,
people,
so I was
and
wondering if you had.
We consider serious proposals. We make serious proposals, and this is a process which is not supposed to be public until the end of it.
Okay, so no deal is imminent.
I didn't say this. Now I understand, by the way, why you wanted to get brief answers to your questions. You want some slogans to be in the
No, the
broadcast.
President of the United States said there was a deal with Russia, so I wanted to ask Russia if there is a deal with the United States.
Well,
I just want to be clear.
We made our comments on this statement. The negotiations continue, and until the end of the negotiations, we cannot disclose what it is about.
Okay. The National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, said last month that President Trump is asking for thousands of Ukrainian children who were taken into Russia to be released now as part of what he called confidence-building measures. What steps has Russia taken to meet Mr. Trump's request?
Look, long before the request coming from Washington, we have been addressing the issue of the fate of the kids who, during the conflict, found themselves outside their homes, outside their families. Most of these kids were attending what you call it, the place where people without parents are taken. Orphanage. And as soon as we announce whatever details we have about those kids, and as soon as the parents or other relevant relatives make themselves available, they're getting the kids back. This has been the process for the last almost 3 years between the ombudsman of Russia and Ukraine.
So there's no new release of thousands of Ukrainian children at the request of President Trump?
No, nobody knows why some experts advise the president about thousands of Ukrainian children. Every now and then, once in 2-3 months, we organize exchanges with Ukrainians with the help of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, who do not, make any noise about what they're doing. They just do something which we are participating in very constructive manner, bringing kids back to their parents or relatives.
But what confidence-building measure can Russia offer now, particularly after this strike in Kyiv, where the President of the United States is saying, Vladimir, stop? How do you convince the United States that Russia is actually serious about peace?
Well, confidence-building measures have been plentiful in the last 10 years. I mentioned a deal in February.
The strike was overnight.
You want a brief answer, right? As I understand from your initial words. Or you want an answer which is explaining the situation. The proposal by President Trump on 30 days moratorium on the strikes against the energy infrastructure was supported by President Putin and observed strictly This was a confidence-building measure against the policy and action taken by Zelensky regime. As I said several hundred times, civilian energy infrastructure was struck. Another confidence-building measure was the proposal of President Trump and his team to resume the deal on Black Sea. And the delegations met in Istanbul, in Riyadh. The delegations exchanged the views how this can be implemented in practical terms, and the proposals made by Russia are being considered by the United States. There are many other examples about confidence-building measure, but if you believe that it's only Ukraine who is interested in confidence-building, I think a short answer would be this is an illusion.
Do you take President Trump at his word when he says if Russia is unable to make a deal on ending the bloodshed in Ukraine, he'll put secondary tariffs, I think he means sanctions there, on oil coming out of Russia? Or do you think that at this point, the relationship between Russia and America has been rebuilt and that won't happen?
Well, I cannot comment on what you think President Trump meant when he said something.
What do you think he meant when he said secondary tariffs on oil coming out of Russia?
Well, we hear many things coming from President Trump. President Trump said that he's sick and tired of the situation in this settlement, especially yesterday when he commented the statements by Zelensky. And President Trump has his own proposals and has his own style in mentioning those proposals in his public speeches. We concentrate, as I said, on the real negotiations which President Trump supports and instructed his people to continue to engage in these negotiations. I'm sorry, the answer was a bit longish, but it's difficult to explain otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I ask about the threat of sanctions or secondary tariffs. Because you recently said in an interview, if you had to personally pick sides, you would keep the existing sanctions in place on Russia. You said you've restructured the economy to be self-sufficient, and there is a growing fear that, quote, cunning Americans will lift sanctions all of a sudden to flood our market with services and technologies. So if that's the case, why should the United States consider lifting sanctions at all?
Why do you ask me? You just quoted my statement, and this statement is clear for me and clear to all those who read it. If you have questions to the American side, how they treat the situation, it is not the right address to raise it with me.
So you want to keep sanctions in place? Is that really the Russian position?
I don't want to re-explain what I explained, I think, in quite clear manner. And you quoted, I think, very close to the
I quoted you.
To the real content, yeah.
Right.
But it was a bit longer than normally you prefer. I know.
Well, back in February, though, one of your colleagues, Kirill Dmitriev, who runs the Sovereign Wealth Fund and has been active in the diplomacy with the United States, said something a bit different. That's why I'm asking for clarification, because he said there is the expectation that American companies would return to the Russian market in the second half of 2025.
Well, the president of Russia commented upon this situation. He said that we have nothing against American company, but those companies who decided to leave their business in Russia might find that their place has been occupied already by Russian or other foreign investors. And in this case, we would not make any decisions which would discriminate those who came to invest in Russia instead of Americans. If American companies would like to come to a place which is not yet occupied, if they want to propose a project, a new project, on top of the previous business ties, of course we will look into this, and if we find balance of our interests, I think it would be only natural to get into business together.
Well, what areas has the U.S. offered to lift sanctions on? Because it wouldn't be possible for many American companies to enter the Russian market right now under the existing sanctions.
It is up to them to decide.
So no offer has been made?
No. How can we offer something in a situation
The United States
when,
to Russia.
well, the United States clearly tells us that they are interested in doing business together. We never reject business proposals provided they are based on the equal opportunities and the treatment of each other and lead to a balance of interest. Specific proposals which are being mentioned in the media, I cannot comment upon. This is not serious. We are not we are not acting like the people in Kyiv who talk to the world through the media, including talking to presidents of great countries.
So if I understand you correctly, you neither fear sanctions nor want them lifted.
Look, you quoted my statement, and
Yes.
you quoted it right. That's my position.
Okay. So when President Trump threatens new sanctions, that's not of concern.
You're asking this for the third time.
Yes.
This was a brief answer. This was a brief answer, by the way.
You are being brief and direct on that part. I was asking on the sanctions for clarity and directness. Broadly speaking, when you look at what's happening in the battle space in Ukraine right now, analysts say about 18% of Ukrainian territory is under the control of Russian forces. U.S. intelligence says battlefield trends are in Russia's favor. So if that's the case, why should the U.S. believe Russia is serious about ending the war if everything is in your favor?
Well, we judge by the reaction of our American colleagues to what we tell them. And this is being done during negotiations. They're confidential, as any serious negotiation. And they know our position, and as I quoted Marco Rubio, he publicly said that they better understand the Russian position and the reasons for what is going on. And he said that nobody in Washington lifted a finger to do the same, to try to understand Russia during the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. And this implies that the dialogue continues, that the dialogue is supported by the United States, and I reiterate that it is supported by the Russian Federation, and this dialogue continues.